Buen Camino, everyone. I changed the angle on this video so it's going to look different from every other video. I don't have the lake in the background because I've got the sun in my eye here. I don't know if the light's any better. Now you can't see the lake, but we'll live with it. So today is going to be my second episode, both of my vlog. Maybe you watch that, and it's a fun story about how I got robbed. But today, for my review video for Knowing the Way, as I'm calling this series, I want to talk about the book that I just finished that I've known about for a long time, that took me forever to get through, probably because you're not actually supposed to sit down and read this book cover to cover, and I did because I'm crazy. And it is The Road to Santiago, the Complete Cultural Handbook. Probably a lot of you have seen this book or have heard about it if you've researched the Camino Frances. It's getting kind of dated now. It was published in 2000. I think it was probably written before that, 1999 and back. And it's by two people who are really big in the Camino studies academic community. There's David M. Gitlitz. Hope I'm doing that right. And Linda K. Davidson. And I've read some other works by Linda K. Davidson, and she's done other editing and writing and publishing on the Camino. David M. Gitlitz I haven't, but his other book sounds really interesting. He has another book that he also did with Linda K. Davidson, A Drizzle of Honey, which is collections of recipes from the crypto Jews, Jews who were living secretly after kind of their religion had been banned. They were kind of forced to go underground. So that really sounds interesting, and I guess it's a combined history, anthropology cookbook. That sounds really interesting. That sounds like the kind of thing, it sounds weird enough that I would want to read it. This book, The Road to Santiago, the Complete Cultural Handbook, has the wonderful subtitles including art, architecture, geology, history, folklore, saints' lives, flora, and fauna. And yes, it does cover all of that. Mostly, though, it covers retablos. More than anything else, they cover retablos. In every church that you will ever see along the Camino Frances, they have a chapter in here or a paragraph in here about the retablo. They talk about retablos more than anything. So there's a little bit of flora and fauna in there in certain parts. It's well, there's no churches in this part, but we have to have a chapter about it. Here's the wildlife you can see. This book is not meant to be read cover to cover. And so my review of it is going to be a little bit two-handed, because you have, on the one hand, I am so impressed by the work that these guys have done. The sheer amount of information in this volume is unbelievable. I couldn't even imagine how long it would take me to write something like this. They were talking about when they were doing their first Caminos in 1974, and they share a lot of stories from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and how the Camino was changing, and how the different museums, cathedrals, churches, hostels had changed, and also the way in which the flow of pilgrims was changing, the increased flow of pilgrims, and how some of the towns and churches that had been abandoned were actually kind of being renewed by this increased flow of pilgrims. Every single chapter in the main text, kind of from Roncesvalles on, really kind of follows your main stages of the Camino Frances. The first 50 pages or so of the book I was not that into, because it wasn't going to be places that I was going to be. They were talking about coming from the Saint-Port Pass and all the places along there, so they never in this book talk about Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, because they don't talk about anything in France. They talk a lot about the border area from that Saint-Port Pass till it meets up with the people who cross from Saint-Jean to Roncesvalles through the Napoleon or through Charlemagne Val Carlos route. I wasn't interested in that, mostly because I wasn't going to be there. And because this book is a guidebook, and it's not a book that you're supposed to sit down and read, but it's more a book that, I guess, from the way that it's written, to be with you, and I'm going to have this book, and I'm going to go to a church, and I'm going to go look at this, and then I'm going to see, okay, yes, all right, yes, well, it's this, they're explaining this about the art, this about the history, this about the religious significance, and as that, I think that this is a treasure trove. The problem is, I don't know how you could ever use this book as this, because look at this book, right? This is huge, and I should have had my Brierly guide with me, because the Brierly guide is like this big, right? And it's about this thin, and it's made of super lightweight paper, and he even tells you like tear pages out of it. And most guidebooks I've seen are small like that. Ones from like Lonely Planet or Rick Steves are like even smaller than that. And then a lot of the other Camino specific guides are really thin, lightweight paper. This thing is a tome. This is massive. This is like one of the biggest paperback books that I have read recently. I mean, it's 440 pages. Like it's on regular kind of stock paper, and it's got big dimensions, and it's got big print in it too. No, like, would I like put this book in my backpack and hike 800 kilometers? No. I'm bringing 3 books with me on the Camino. I'm bringing the Brierly guide, I'm bringing my own journal to write in, and I'm bringing the Holy Bible. And even with the Holy Bible, I'm only bringing like the New Testaments and the Psalms, and it's going to be a really small, compact one, in like a dual language edition, but real small, and it's just going to have like the Psalms and the New Testament, and that's what I'm gonna, do my nightly readings from. I'm not gonna bring the rest of the Bible with me, because Deuteronomy is not going to be that helpful for spiritual enlightenment for me when I'm walking this like ancient pilgrimage path. So even that, bringing 3 books, I think is kind of a lot, because my journal will probably be the biggest one. The other 2 are really lightweight and compact, and are very, very specific. I mean, I'm going on a religious pilgrimage. I want to have my Bible with me, but I'm not bringing my main Bible, because it's too heavy. I'm getting a special one for the Camino that is very compact and lightweight, and only has some of the books in it. And the Brierly guide is meant to be very compact, and my journal, it's not too compact. It's going to be the biggest book that I bring with me, but I want to have it with me. I couldn't imagine bringing this thing, though I'd love to have it. But physically, the book is not in a format where you could physically bring it with you to do the things that would be the only good thing for this book to really have. Because reading it at home, I'm like, oh yeah, that's interesting. This is Baroque, and this is Gothic, and they have this retablo, and this is this person of this age. But I'm not going to remember all of this, right? And I couldn't boil it all down to notes. It'd be like back to like writing a thesis or a dissertation. I'd be going nuts. So this is one of the most incredible stores of knowledge I've ever seen, and it's totally useless at the same time because of the format. And I thought about it, and I thought, it's all just words, it's all just text, but it's way too big to bring with you on the Camino. So as a guidebook, it's not really very useful, because it physically can't go the one place that it would be perfect to go, which would be on Camino with you. God bless you if you bring this with you, and if you brought this with you, like leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear about it. And then the other thing is that this book is just all text, so there's no pictures of what you're seeing other than like some diagrams and some maps. So if it's too big to bring with you, then maybe you just should have gone full out and just done like a $70 like coffee table book where there's pictures of everything. And then like you could like pair things up after you had seen them, or have the visual references there, and having this richness of information in like a large glossy photo book, man, even charge $100 for it, that would probably be useful. And that might be something that pilgrims would really want to have after they've done their trip or something like that. But as it is now, like it's too big to have take it with you, and it's too small to be that big glossy thing that would help you reflect on things. So it's just like a huge storehouse of knowledge. Now, some of you might be thinking, as I was thinking, well, if you had an ebook reader, you could bring the ebook version with you. A lot of people have ebook readers or tablets, and that really solves the problem. Then you could just, each day that you're out there, pull up the chapter on the art and architecture of the churches and the villages that you're going through, and that would be perfect. This is like the perfect ebook, right? This is brilliant. It's perfect ebook. There's not an ebook edition. There's not. You can't get it on Kindle. You can't get it as like a PDF anywhere. You can't. So this is the most like brilliant, well-researched, amazing book about the art and architecture that you'll find all along the trail. The scholarship is amazing. It's very interesting, but I can't find an actual practical use for it. I did read this thing cover to cover, which you're not supposed to, I think, do. So, not having walked the Camino, I read this book cover to cover. Very dry in that, because you get to parts of it, which is like this retablo and that retablo, and here you're looking at a picture of Saint Sebastian, but I'm not looking at a picture of Saint Sebastian. If I was, I would probably be enjoying it a lot more. But I did get a lot out of it, connecting the different art movements and remembering what I learned in art history, and relating it to all of the research I've done on Spanish history. And there are references in the back that kind of explain what all of the terminology are for people that aren't familiar with art history, or this part of art history, or church architecture. And I thought that part was really great. And once I got onto the part of the trail that I'm going to be walking, I was really interested, especially in like the main places, you know, like when they're talking about Burgos, or when they're talking especially about Santiago, about main places that I kind of am interested in. That's when the book became much more interesting for me. As a reference, if you were writing a paper, or if you were, you know, writing up about, like writing a memoir, this would be a great thing to have, I think, after the fact, and using as a reference and using as a source. Unfortunately, the binding and the size of it just doesn't allow it to be a book that would be easily to take with you. I wouldn't add this much weight just for this. I guess maybe if you were like an art student, art major, or architecture person, then you would be interested in doing that. And the other thing that I found in this book, which I think is very, very unfortunate, is the attitude that I constantly see, that is, oh, well, in 1974, when the Camino was dead and no one was doing it, like, people would just be like shocked that there were even any pilgrims, and that was great because we could eat in the kitchen of the Parador. Or, you know, they even talk about villages that are abandoned in 74, and then they were like back alive in 1999, and they're like, oh, you know, the romance of this is gone, and now it's all crowded and commercialized. And I really hate this attitude, which the attitude is, you know, the pilgrimage would be great if there just were no pilgrims on it. You know, if just these hundreds of thousands of people would just stop coming, and the pilgrimage would just be dead, crumbling, and empty, except for me, the one special person who could take it all alone. You know, like the true pilgrims were the ones that did in the 70s, says the people that did it first in the 70s. Oh no, you know, but if you did it in the 80s, then, oh, you know, we were still true pilgrims then in the 80s. But those people then if you did it in the 90s, it's like, oh, I'm glad I did it before it got popular. You know, there were only 10,000 people doing it back then. Or then the people from the early 2000s are like, oh, I'm really glad I did it before it got popular, before they ruined it with all that crass commercialism. When I did it, there was only 100,000 people doing it. And you just see that, and it's kind of laughable, because you can really, really see it. And it's just such a terrible attitude. Like, it's really that attitude that I kind of describe as, you know, the pilgrimage would be great if just there were no pilgrims on it, right? The pilgrimage would just be wonderful. Nobody did it. If every village was just economically depressed and dead, and there were no resources for anybody, if none of the trails were waymarked, if it was just an empty shell, then it would be this wonderful romantic adventure. But damn, it got popular and ruined it all. Now you have to deal with other people, and they snore. It's horrible. I just think it's such a bad attitude. I mean, I wish that I could have personally done the Camino when there was less people. I wish I'd been able to do it 3 years ago when I started planning it. But I mean, I didn't hear about it until 3 years ago. So it's not like I could have done it in the 90s. Also, I was a small child, so I probably, you know, I was adolescent in the 90s, but, you know, I couldn't have done it then, right? It's so weird. And just, I'm sure that these guys are lovely people, and I love their insight, and I love the historical aspect of hearing about it from the 70s, but please don't just be like, oh, alas, they've ruined the pilgrimage by reviving it. Like, we just don't need that attitude. Like, everybody's walking their own Camino. Let's just embrace everybody. Let's just love everybody. Let's accept that the Camino was never one perfect way, that it has risen up and died out and risen up and been changed and reformed and forgotten about and remembered and altered, and that the way markings have changed and that the path has changed, and that everything about it has changed. The change is the only constant. You know, there was never a golden age. Stop, right? It's like just drop this whole idea, right? I mean, it's not make Camino great again. It's not like a return to the golden age. Like, this is the golden age, right? This is the golden age. If you had done it in the Middle Ages, like, there would have been like lepers dying and people like murdering you all the time. And the pilgrimage is much nicer now, right? Very few people get murdered, and there's very few lepers. And we have like medicine and stuff now. So stop, everyone that writes these things like, oh, if you'd only done it in 1986, if you'd only done it in 1974, that was the real pilgrimage, but now it's terrible. I mean, because, you know, the people whose first pilgrimage is going to be like 2021 or that's a holy year, but 2025, they're going to write the same things. They're going to be like, oh, if only you had done it in 2025, that's when it was a real pilgrimage, but now in 2040, it's all ruined by commercialism. Until they make like Camino Disney, it's not ruined by commercialism. It's going to be whatever you get out of the experience. And you know, you get a lot out of it. If you read this book, I still recommend it as a resource. I think that every pilgrim should have it on their bookshelf back home. Whether you carry it in your backpack with you or not, that's on you. I'm not lugging this thing around Spain, but if you are, maybe I'll check out your copy when we tour a cathedral together. But this is staying on my bookshelf. It's not coming with me. Buen Camino, everyone. I'll see you soon.